Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I have to say, she pretty much has blazed a trail in her profession. And that is somebody who either attends an event, convention, seminar, or it could be something online. And she sketches the event to encapsulate it and bring out the key points. And there it lives forever, either on social media or distributed to people who were at the meeting. Just amazing what she pulls from this. Let's say it's a 1 hour meeting, those key points. And she's with us today. We're going to talk about a book that she's written to help others do the same exact thing. Ashton Rodenhiser is with us. Welcome back. How are you?
Hi, doing so great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I didn't even know this existed. And it makes so much sense because when you're going to an event, a convention, whatever it might be, there's a lot of stuff happening all at once. And forget about it. If you go with a colleague or two, now they're sitting next to you or standing, depending on the event. Now you're focusing on the social aspect. Then you have the information that's being literally thrown at you. And how do you process all the key points? You're like the outside observer, getting all that information together in a fun graphical representation of what went down at the convention, seminar, whatever meeting. And so cool. You've given us examples before. I wish this existed, or people called upon your talents with most of the events that I've been to. It'd be so much. And not only is it just cool, it's so helpful, to have it. And I think the key point is it comes from you, who is an outside observer. So you got a fresh look at it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I'm biased. I'm like, every meeting should have this. How do they not have this? But, I really do. For me, it's really making sure that I work with people who care about the learning of the folks in the room and engagement of it, not just in the moment, but that long term. So if someone wants to hire me just to be like the entertainment, I'm like, not your person. There's people who are going to be way more entertaining than me to do this, but I'm really more of a communication expert, like disguised as an illustrator. So yeah, that's sort of like a beautiful kind of coming together to be able to help visualize these ideas and not just make it fun and engaging, but really powerful from a learning perspective and a memory retention perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And the entertainment thing again, I go back to, it's cool. So
it is cool. It is cool.
And let's be honest, in a way, there's a little bit of entertainment. There is.
I know there is, but
that's not the goal. That's not the goal.
That's not the goal. That's just like this beautiful byproduct, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like I don't want to call it a gimmick. Just something additional to add to the event where depending on how it's being represented, the audience can watch you sketching as well and coming up with the points.
And if you're like trying to find budget to pay for something like this, there has to be an ROI. And for me, the ROI is in the participants learning and the engagement. And I've even had some folks even told me after an event that they didn't go to, that they saw all the cool posts on Twitter and of the graphics and they had FOMO. Like that's actually a little bit of an ROI. You could use them in your marketing. They don't have to just be in the moment. And I've actually had an extra step on educating my clients. And I'm there during the day, but don't forget you have these graphics forever, and use them in your Twitter months later, use them in your marketing leading up to next year's event to showcase what folks could expect from a content and an engagement perspective, right? So there always has to be an ROI for making a decision to hire something like this. And I see this as an investment in your accessibility efforts and the learning and the continuation in marketing of your event into the future.
For sure. Especially if there's two ways to look at this. You could be a company, big company, whatever, and you have a yearly event and a lot of people attended and you're added to the event. You could also look at it as if you're somebody who sells seminars, think of somebody like Tony Robbins. And kind of, part of the backbone of what he does is a lot of events like that. where if you want to sell future events, this is the marketing for it. This is
Mhm.
what you missed. This is what we talked about. And social obviously is so impactful to see and graphical Instagram, hello, to
Mhm.
put the images there. And again, sure, pictures of people at the event. It adds so much, and definitely about the education part of it. But
Mhm.
I'm a graphic guy. I attend events. Didn't even know this existed until we met.
Mhm.
And now you have a book out that teaches people
Mhm.
how to do this, right?
Yeah, so I started writing the book in early 2022. So it took me about a year and a half to kind of put it all together. And sort of my goal and desire and passion for putting this book together was the fact that, yes, I'm a professional at this point, but a lot of times folks would come up to me at events and say, "Oh, I wish I could have the skill to do this. Oh, I wish you could just, attend every meeting that I go to and you can draw these for me." But really, you can learn how to do it for yourself, especially if you don't know how to draw. So I wrote the
Hmm.
book. It's called The Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting. And sketchnoting is a term that was coined by a man in 2006 when he published the Sketchnote Handbook, but it uses the same skill set. This way of visualizing ideas has kind of been formally around since the 70s. So the skill set isn't new, but the term of sketchnoting has been around since 2016 and has kind of taken on a life of its own as a pretty common word. So some folks will introduce me as the sketchnoter in the room, and that's okay. But the
Hmm.
way that I see sketchnoting and the way that it was kind of designed was more for personal note taking. So I leaned heavy into the sketchnoting word because it was already pretty popular. And there's a lot of emphasis on the beginner part of the beginner's guide to sketchnoting because I really wanted to make this idea of visualizing your own notes and getting all the benefits of doing that in a way that is accessible as possible, low barrier, non-threatening. So after we kind of set everything up in the book and get everybody going, the first drawing element that I teach is a line, right? And how to use a line. You can use a line to connect information, to separate information, to show
Hmm.
flow of information, to spark information, right? At the end of the day, the information is always going to be like king, queen. It's always going to be the most important. But how can you start to incorporate these simple, very simple drawing elements like a line to help elevate and bring to life that information a little bit more in a visual way? And so, yeah, I was really trying to close the gap with this book. And I almost see it as like, I know Mike a little bit who wrote the Sketchnote Handbook, and he's a great guy. But I almost see this as like maybe a precursor to his book because a lot of folks see folks like me who've been doing it for a really long time and have like thousands of presentations under their belt. It better look decent. If it doesn't, there's a problem, right? So I wanted to close the gap when it came to I can't draw like Ashton. She's 10 years in, but I would like to experience the benefits and try it for myself. So that's sort of my group of folks that I would love to kind of get their hands on this book. So they might be like students in school or university, someone that attends a lot of conferences or meetings, or they could even start to take this skill set and learn it for themselves and then teach it to others. If you're a teacher, you could teach it to school kids, or you could be in the boardroom and like leading a small team meeting and start, to visualize the information that comes out of your small meeting, for example. So there's so many different ways, but I just wanted to help people get started, and build their confidence. So then in a very short, like we're in a very instant gratification culture,
Hmm.
right? So it was also my goal to, in a very short amount of time, give you the information that you need just to start putting pen to paper and build your confidence. Because I find once you create your first sketch note, you're going to create more. It's that barrier to starting at all, right? And I recently read something called The Beginner's Gap. There's I want to make a sketch note. I want to experience all the benefits of visualizing information, and I want it to look really nice at the same time, right? Like aesthetics, I do teach aesthetics, like how it looks. But at the end of the day, the process is just as important as how it looks, right? But we have an idea we want it to look like. We look at Ashton's, we go, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. But your skill set doesn't match where you want to be. So there's this huge gap. So my goal with the book was to try to close that gap as much as possible so that you could get the skills and it can look kind of nice as close, as quickly as possible so that you can kind of match where you want to be and what your skill set is.
I would have to imagine if you're going to do this, you have to have some love of graphics. Would you agree?
I would say the way that I look at it is most people don't consider themselves creative. And I almost feel like maybe my next book will just be on that topic, to be honest with you, because most people don't believe they're creative, but everybody is creative in their own way. Maybe you're not more of a graphic person, but maybe you're more creative with words. Maybe you're more creative in not visual art, but a different type of form of like communication or something. But at some point, most people who don't consider themselves creative believe that because something happened in their life. A lot of times it's in childhood where you had an experience where someone said something, you are not creative. You're thinking of your moment, aren't you? Are you thinking?
I already have it.
Exactly.
I'm there.
Honestly, in my introduction in the book, I actually named this. I said, most people have this experience. And my experience was in grade 4 when my teacher said to me, I was painting wrong. And that stuck with me. And I still did creative things throughout my life, but that still stuck with me. And I could have let that instance go. Because in my mind at the time, at I guess, 9 years old, I go, oh, I can't do this. Right. So most people at some point had that experience that has stuck with them. And then they internalize and go, I couldn't do the thing. Someone said this equals I am not creative. And that's just so frustrating to me because it's just not true, because it is in our innate nature to
We
be
all are
creative. We are all creative in our own way. You might not be an artist in the traditional sense. Maybe you don't draw, or you've gotten away from it, or maybe you don't paint, or you don't have like physical mediums, but maybe you're really good at problem solving. That's being creative. Maybe you're a great writer. That's being creative. Maybe you take really good pictures with your iPhone. That's being creative, right? And I feel like creativity is one of these things that it's hard. It's I don't want to say it's a soft skill, but it's a thing that you can bring to the workplace that is highly valuable as an employee, right? And so we have to redefine for ourselves what creativity is and what our creative genius is and what we bring to the table in our work or our life, right? So long-winded answer to your question, when someone says, oh, I can't draw, I'm like, can you though? Because if you can write letters, you can draw, because letters are just drawings in disguise. Because I said we start with a line. And what are letters? Lines. Curvy lines, straight lines, zigzag lines. That's all they are, right? So you could have actually a really nice looking sketch note that actually has like this visual appeal to it just by using lines, or just using those lines and turning it into an arrow, or just using those lines and turning it into a circle, or turning it into a square. And then you can use the square as a container to hold information together, for example, right? So at the end of the day, it's just about lines and how we use lines and how we connect them. So it's less about illustration and being an artist or knowing how to draw, but redefining also what drawing is as a thinking tool and not something to be admired, and separate from us. I go to an art gallery to look at a drawing. That's one way to experience drawing, but drawing can actually be an action for creativity, right? And you don't have to know how to draw anything. And that's sort of my my goal with the book too, is like, I'm creative. Like, okay, let's get back into being creative. I am a creative person, but I don't really know what that means like for me, or I don't know what that is for me right now. But everybody can draw. So that's sort of part of that gap I'm trying to fill with the book too, is like redefining what drawing is and redefining what creativity is. And I find most people who probably find the book have this like little inkling in their mind, like, I think I'm creative. I don't know. Maybe I am. Maybe this is one way that I could experience information in the world, and I can have a really extreme benefit when it comes to my learning, and let's try this out and do it in a really non-threatening way.
I have so many thoughts
Okay, give them
based
to
on what
me.
you just said. First off, when you draw, doodle any of this on a tablet, for
Mhm.
me, and I wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist ever since I was a
Right.
kid.
Right.
So when I got a tablet, I don't have one now. And you know what? You're inspiring me. I'm probably going to go get one.
Awesome.
But I
Awesome.
remember the first one I got was, I'm gonna say the year was 1995, and it was a Wacom, WACOM,
Yes.
big
Familiar.
manufacturer,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So different when you start drawing that way. So that's one point. The other point, based on what you said, that we think we're not creative because of things we heard,
Mm-hmm.
that is the baseline for all of our lives.
Yes.
Everything, every limiting belief we have,
Absolutely.
right down to making money
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that you can't,
Yeah.
probably came from your childhood and is embedded in your subconscious, which is running that program over and over again. Your subconscious, it's been said in research that your subconscious is 95% of you. We're 5% conscious. Google it many times,
Mm-hmm.
not making it
Mm-hmm.
up. And that being said, I was in 11th grade, Mrs. Meyer's art class, drawing and painting,
Mm.
which I still have. Big
Oh,
painting,
nice.
autumn scene, barn, field, tall, weedy kind of grass leading you up to the barn. The sky wasn't coming out right. This guy
Right.
just wasn't. And I was kind of a
Well, that's a hard,
perfectionist.
yeah.
I've let that go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Mrs. Meyer, can you help me with the sky? It's just not coming out right. And Mrs. Meyer, love her, with her coffee breath, takes the brush and it came out good. And she says to me, you know what you are? You are an underachiever. And I never forgot
Mm-hmm.
that. And to your point, yours was in the fourth grade.
Fourth
Mine
grade.
was in 11th
Yeah.
grade. Um,
Yeah.
maybe that was a good thing she said that because that pushed me further, but it also made me
Mm.
feel like, garbage that I
Right.
wasn't good. I wasn't good enough to paint that sky.
Yeah.
So yeah, for anybody that's thinking that you're not creative, the word creativity is so sought after in every
Mm.
line of work. If you look,
Absolutely.
companies are looking for
Yeah.
creative IT people,
Yeah.
creative engineers, because they want creative thinkers. So,
Yeah.
to your point, Ashton, it's not just about can I draw? It's about
Mm-hmm.
can you be we all can be creative. Absolutely. Get a
Yeah.
tablet and play. You're creative. And they're not
Yeah.
expensive
Yeah.
either. They're not expensive and it's fun.
No, we could honestly talk about the whole limiting beliefs thing and like we could
Oh,
talk
yeah,
a whole hour just on
for
that because
sure.
that was one of the things like actually I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, what was the hardest thing when you first started your business? And I said, myself.
Hmm.
I said, I could learn the business skills. I could take all the, YouTube teaches you how to run a business for goodness sakes, it was myself. And I spent just as much, if not more time reading personal development books
Yeah.
on business, money, mindset than I did on my actual business and my skill as an artist or as an illustrator, to be honest with you. So
Sure.
I had to really, really work hard, so now I'm like coming up like I'm an author. Like, so now I have a new term to give myself. I'm like, okay, I think I'm an author. I wrote a book. I'm an author, right?
Hmm.
Because being an author comes with a whole other set of limiting beliefs around that too. And yeah, I digress, but we could talk
Yeah,
about
and
that
I didn't mean
for
to
a long
either, but
time.
it's,
Yeah, that's true.
I want to
Yeah.
illustrate for anybody that says I'm not creative.
Yeah.
You're so on point in saying that we're all creative in
Yeah.
some way, some
In
aspect.
some way, and it's going to
Yeah.
look so different for everybody else. And like I just want people to be able to tap into their creativity as easy as possible. And sometimes we just don't even know. Like I used to run an art festival in my town for 7 years and that was the basis of it. That
Mhm.
I would all the projects were so different because I wanted my small town to expand their belief around what art is. And art is, someone just banging on a drum, someone it's drawing with chalk on the ground, someone it's like these like weird sound effects you can make with your mouth. Like it's just really, it's so widespread. And if you can connect your creativity and have like, sometimes you just need to have those opportunities and someone to teach you them, or just introduce them to you. Right. So you can just start to play around with it too. But yeah, the book itself was a beautiful, like, it was a great process because I did a bunch of beta reading. I ended up having almost 100 beta readers go through the process of reading the book and giving me feedback.
Wow.
And I followed a philosophy called, I followed a book's philosophy called Write Useful Books by Rob Fitzpatrick. And I really fell in love with his philosophy because part of his thing is around nonfiction, is a lot of nonfiction. And hopefully I'm not ruining this for everybody who reads nonfiction from now on. Most nonfiction books are idea books. They're not how-to books, but people look to nonfiction as a how-to book, and then they read a book. Have you ever read a nonfiction book and you ended it and you're like, what did I just learn? I learned, and the example I always give is Atomic Habits.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody loves that book. Do you know why? Because it is not an ideas book. It is an actual how-to book. And it seems so simple. It's like, oh yeah, nonfiction books should be tell you what to do. But most nonfiction doesn't actually tell you how to do anything. And that's why Atomic Habits, in my opinion, is so popular, because he actually tells you what to do. So
rock on with that. I wanted to, I don't want to jump in. You got me so excited. I have an older daughter, and she gave me that book for my birthday a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
And it's sitting on my counter, and it's like, it's, I'm going to dig into it maybe this weekend. I didn't really hear a lot about the book, but now you're bringing it up again. But I know exactly what you're saying. When you read a nonfiction book, it's like, well, what did I just get out of it? Because you want I think we're
just
so
tell
driven.
me what to do. Just tell me what to do already. Show me, handhold me through the process.
We're programmed. Look at GPS. You click, make turn, it's all done for you. We need that a lot because we're so busy. And I think also our attention spans are not what they could be or were with everything going on nowadays. So yeah, for sure. And your book pretty much holds everybody's hand through the entire process.
Honestly, the hardest chapter to write was the introduction, because I wanted people, part of Rob's philosophy is get them the goods as quickly as possible, right? Get them the information, tell them what to do as quickly as possible. So writing the introduction was so hard because I wanted to give them enough to get them grounded, but I needed them to get to chapter 1 to actually start putting stuff into action as quickly as possible. So every time I did a beta reading round, I chopped my introduction by half, then by half, then by half. Because what a lot of authors do is they want to front load the theory. And then maybe at the end, they're like, oh yeah, and you should maybe do these things. Right, you've already lost them by that point, because they're so overwhelmed by the theory. And chances are, someone who picks up the Beginner's Guide to Sketchnoting, maybe they're familiar with the term, or if they heard it or they seen me at an event, thought it was cool and they want to learn it. They already know what it is. I don't need to tell them about it too much. I don't need to say all the brain science behind everything, right? So I just have this little brain guide that shows up throughout the book to drop a stat here and there. Oh yeah, it's also good for this. Oh yeah, it's also good for this. Because I didn't have to write, 50 pages on why you should consider sketchnoting. I was like, I'm going to make the assumption that my readers already know what sketchnoting is, or they wouldn't have picked up the book, or they've heard about it. So I'm just going to give them the goods as quickly as I possibly can, because that's part of the philosophy that I wanted to follow. And I think I held myself from writing a book for so long because I knew there was something different I wanted to do with mine. But a lot of the books that I was reading were these idea books, but it wasn't until I read the Write Useful Books book that was defined for me. And I was like, oh, this is why I struggle so much. And that's why when I was thinking about how to write my book, I was coming up with so much hesitation and unsureness, because a lot of the books out there are so heavy on the brain science and the theory. So I just sort of tell people, like, if you really are fascinated with how our brains think in images and all the benefits around that, there's books just on theory. Go and get those books, but that's not what this book is. Is some people like me, honestly, like, I know enough brain science to speak sort of intelligently about it, but that's not my vibe. I'm not like, I don't want to like read all the articles. I know it works for me, and I have had over 10 years, people tell me it works for them. That's good enough for me,
Wow.
and I know enough stats to know that there is science that backs this up, and that's good enough for me. So I don't need to front load this book with all of this content in the beginning with the theory behind it all. Just give people what they want. They want to learn how to do it, and try to do that as quickly as possible.
And it's such a fun, interesting, unique profession. It is. I wish we had samples to show everybody today, but we can see them on your website, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your website?
You can go to mindsedcreative.ca. That's all things professional when it comes to me being a live illustrator at events or meetings. And I do have information about my book on there as well, but I actually have a whole different space people can visit, sketchnote.school. So I've started a whole school that complements the book in an online community and a free weekly newsletter and all that good stuff. So if this is something that you might want to try out for yourself, or somebody, then sketchnotes.school is the kind of place to go for all things learning how to sketchnote. So,
Oh, okay. Sketchnote.school. That's the specific site to learn.
Yes. Yeah.
Mindsedcreative.ca.
Yeah. Is my professional site.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to work with you.
Yeah.
It is, again, I'm a graphic guy. At least I call myself one. I think I'm creative. I'm going to admit it. This was an eye opener in learning about what exists here. And I'm surprised I haven't seen it at an event so far. Yeah, it's unique. It adds so much, and you're amazing. You're super creative.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind.
And yeah, I still remember the time when you had me talk about something. It was just a random topic, and you sketched it as if we were at a seminar. And just watching you, go to town there on the tablet, it's just awesome. It really is.
Yeah.
It adds so much. But again, it's not just about the drawing. It's about listening and pulling the information out of the event that you think will be relevant to others. And you got to get to the point. You got to get to the point quickly. And I think that's where the talent comes in. And I think most people can do that as well. Just watch a newscast at night on TV. What did you just hear? Write it down.
Exactly.
Start by just writing it down, and then turn it into pictures and words.
Yeah.
Ashton, great having you on here. Really is every time we talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.